Hear the Laughs with Carol Burnett, weeknights at 6 on WTIC-TV, Channel 61.
Every time I turn around, I see the girl who turns my world around, standing there every time.
So today we're watching an episode of Punky Brewster titled Cherie Lifesaver. Great title.
I think it's more like Sherry.
No, her name's Cherie.
Cherie, that's the name of the character.
Cherie. Cherie Johnson is the actress and the character's name.
That is true. Cherie Johnson was the niece of the show's creator and producer, David Duclon,
Wow.
Yes.
who named the character for her.
Wow.
But look, she auditioned for the role 7 times before the network finally said, give it to your niece.
Wow. That's crazy.
But let's take a step back.
Still
Punky Brewster.
nepotism.
This was a huge show in our youth.
Yeah.
Rusty, I believe you dated Punky Brewster in your mind for a few years.
Probably not as long as, not a few years, but definitely in my mind, dated her. I actually, believe it or not, I actually tried to dress like Punky Brewster for a time period.
Oh, I completely believe it.
Yes. I had the bandanas, I had the shoes. Did not have the pigtails though. I had a crush on a girl in my class that wore her hair like that with the pigtails and the same like barrette things. And I had a huge crush on her just because she kind of resembled Punky Brewster with her hair.
She was genuinely so cute.
Oh, yeah. Did you watch the show when it was on?
I loved it.
Loved it.
Didn't take much to please me. I liked the colorful writing of her name. Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
that's great.
I loved her. I loved her name. You know,
Yeah.
what an iconic name.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was actually named after a real girl who Brandon Tartikoff, who is from Freeport, Long Island, had a crush on her in school. So then he named the character after her.
Wow.
In fact, one of the producers said, I think our Punky's first name was Penelope. And if that's your name, you'd welcome a change. It sounds like an ant with stockings rolled up to her knees, which sounds like something someone from the 30s would say. To me, I think Penelope's a hot name.
No.
Okay, I guess.
You're wrong.
Did either of you also like the cartoon?
I don't think I ever watched it.
I did watch
My
it.
goodness, Ed.
Punky Brewster, your mind is just a fantasy.
Wait, but so I wanted to say, not only was Punky Brewster named after Brendan Tartikoff's crush, the show was basically his idea, and also Punky's dog Brandon was named after him. So this guy's really getting flattered by this show.
Yeah.
I did think it was weird to name a dog Brandon, but
Yeah, that is a really strange name for a dog.
can you imagine creating a whole show around a childhood crush?
I could imagine doing that. For
What
sure.
would your show be called, Rusty?
Probably Deirdre. That was my childhood crush. Dear Deirdre.
Oh, I like
Ooh,
that.
Dear Deirdre. That is a good, okay.
Someone's going to call you
Sold.
with a briefcase of money. CBS.
Now, did you know that when NBC's casting call went out for Punky, more than 3,000 adorable elfin actors campaigned for the role? Among them was Tiffany Brissett, who later appeared as Vicky.
Oh.
And Melissa Joan Hart was also a contender.
Wasn't Candace Cameron also auditioned?
Sure.
Maybe the world is blind, or just a little unkind. Don't know. Seems you
Ed, do you know her father, Virgil Fry?
No.
He's in a lot of B movies.
Sounds like a guy who's
She
done
was
drugs
great,
in his life.
though.
Oh, yeah.
I remember as a kid being like, this is what a cool person is like.
Oh, yeah.
This is coolness.
Exactly. In fact, over 10,000 letters were received by the show.
Wow.
And every letter was looked at and talked about. Kids came to trust Punky.
Mhm.
They learned they could confide in her. Fortunately, but also unfortunately, this is, by the way, a producer talking. We had hundreds of letters from kids who had no one else to tell that they were being abused, hurt, sexually assaulted. So they wrote to Punky. And all of those letters were turned over to the proper authorities, all taken care of by the production office so the authorities could investigate.
Not before we could exploit them for story ideas.
And it was kind of like CSI Punky Brewster. Like, you could do a show where the producers of this Punky Brewster show have to like solve the problems of the kids who write into the show.
Wow.
And I feel like that if you knew about this as a kid, you would have written a letter.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What letter would you write now if you could to Punky?
Well, I don't know. This actually is a good segue because so this episode in particular, Cherie Lifesaver,
Cherie?
was the idea of a kid. And to stir up publicity for the series, they had a contest where you would have to submit an idea.
Really?
So speaking of letters as a kid, I was going to say, did you ever submit an idea to anything? I'll go first, which is that I wrote like probably 100 letters to different NES companies, trying to blackmail them into making games where I was like, I've already written to these other companies, so make a deal now.
Wow.
But the weird thing was like all the ideas are totally half-hearted. I was like, it's called Cowboys. You're a cowboy.
You just really wanted to land.
I wanted to make all the threats.
I pitched an idea in Electronic Gaming Monthly. They had a competition to create your own game. And basically I submitted Street Fighter 2, but all the characters I changed to, I gave them either wings or a helmet, but it was pretty much the same concept.
Oh yeah. I was the biggest plagiarist as a child.
But what I did want to bring up, which I guess would kind of be ruining the whole episode, but I read that Back to the Future wanted to make the time machine a refrigerator, but they were afraid that too many kids were going to like trap themselves in their refrigerators, so they changed this idea.
Let me tell you something. I've always been fascinated by this refrigerator danger.
Mhm.
And I finally researched it and I have all the facts.
Oh.
You cannot get trapped inside a refrigerator. It's like,
Ooh, we're going to get into that
whoa,
very soon.
wow.
First, I got to give a shout out to Jeremy Reams. He's the young genius who submitted this premise, which created this episode.
That was a big concern, though, in the 80s with frigid danger.
It was a huge concern.
There was a lot of
It was-
PSAs about that.
It was terrifying.
God, the things people used to be worried about.
But here is the thing. They actually passed a federal law in 1956, the Refrigerator Safety Act, because it was allegedly such a problem. There were kids like left and right being found dead in fridges. And
Really?
yeah, in Oklahoma,
Was it those
It-
kinds that had the metal handle? That you pulled
yeah,
down
that's
on?
why they passed a law that had to be pushed open. And in Oklahoma, it was a felony to leave a fridge out where a kid might find it.
Wow.
I wonder if it was really a thing, like people were killing their kids or kids were being killed and they would stuff them in a refrigerator.
I was thinking, imagine if you put thousands of fridges out there, and it would be like Halloween 3, like a genocide of kids. But in the mid to late 50s, troops of people would sometimes go out searching out abandoned refrigerators to break off the doors as like a public service.
What?
A vigilante.
There hasn't been much on the fridge issue for a while, but a Republican lawmaker in Maryland just tried to get the law repealed about taking the door
Why?
off.
Why?
I don't know why, but I reached out to him on Twitter and he has not yet replied.
I thought you were going to have something.
I thought I was. I thought I was too.
That would have been impressive. But
You know,
still interesting.
One of the producers of the show said that after the show aired, I got the best reward possible. Got a phone call from a woman in the Midwest who said her husband worked for the power company and he'd been electrocuted on the line and had fallen to the ground just as some kids were getting off the bus. They had seen the episode, ran over, gave him CPR, and saved his life.
Shut up.
I don't believe that either.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, what a load.
Um,
That's a lonely woman.
they even ran. They even ran a study about, and they would lock kids in the fridge and see like if they could get out, see like what would happen to their mood and shit. And now the craziest
That's a
thing
job
about
I want.
the craziest thing about this study is that a higher rate of success was associated with fewer years of education attained by the mother and father combined. So it meant,
So street smarts.
yeah, it's like the dumber your
Fridge
parents are,
smarts.
the better your chances are of surviving inside the fridge. I think because like if you're just like a little thug kid
Right.
who's just a moron, you just like punch your way out. But if you're like an intellectual kid,
Well, maybe also you have to take care of yourself.
well, yeah, exactly. If you're an intellectual kid, you're just like, I'm depressed.
Right. You're like,
I
I'm
give up.
cold. I'm gonna go to sleep.
But I'll tell you something crazy. Between 2012 and 2017, 17 people died in the US after being trapped in household appliances, according to data released by the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
No. Inside? not being pinned by? Like, I feel like there's like things always falling on people.
No. These are people who like lock themselves in fridges and die.
No.
And the commissioner was quoted as saying, "These 17 people were not exactly the Avengers."
That's great.
That's my joke, but it's actually true.
Yeah.
The rest of it's true.
But the data says, I don't know. It sounds like suicide.
When this was a big deal,
Are these are like small fridges?
Well, there's actually a horrifying story, which I'll tell you now.
Ooh, meat
Happened
locker.
this year.
Hmm.
3 kids, 6, 4, and 1, got into a recently purchased like chest freezer, and they were not found and died. This just happened 2019.
Mm.
I wish it was a joke.
Like one of those big coffin-looking ones?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Quite appropriately, a coffin. But the fucked up thing is that when the parents were looking for them, and I'm not passing any judgments, but they did seem kind of like fucked up people.
Yeah.
It took them 30 to 40 minutes to look inside this freezer, which just seems like, just like in this episode where you're just like, why are you not looking in the fridge? That's like
The obvious there.
They could not
What's
push it
a
open.
one-year-old kid?
Well, 1 year.
Well, the 6-year-old
hiding
was
and
like, get
seeking.
in. The 6-year-old obviously was the ringleader.
Yeah.
Or they were playing hide and seek. I don't understand this story. This again, it sounds fishy to me.
They were playing hide and seek. They were found by the Grim Reaper. Okay.
But in the 80s, when there's all the grim warnings about the refrigerator, I really believe that I could get out if it ever happened to me, where if like I was put in a refrigerator by like my brother or someone. Ed, did you think you could get out, or Poe?
Of course. But I also believe that if like 20 terrorists took over my school, I'd kill them. I would have survived that.
That unnatural idea as well.
I did a bit of research myself just to find out that if you were in a fridge, how long would it take to suffocate? It would take an adult about an hour and 6 minutes to an hour and 35 minutes to suffocate.
The commission warning, I had some grim lines. It said, double deaths are not uncommon because children naturally enjoy playing together, and old refrigerators provide an interesting place to play. But when that door slams shut, it is dark. And
I feel like 2 people could get out.
This is from the commission statement. And the normally innocent and familiar refrigerator becomes a death trap.
I really believe 2 kids that are old enough could get out, like kick their way out.
I would not want to witness that scene. That'd be a grim play. 2 kids trapped in a fridge. All right, so now let's get into this show, which is deeply fucking weird.
Wait, did this episode, the whole episode felt like a PSA.
It was.
The whole thing felt like there was a gas leak in the studio, and everyone was like slowly
acting-
being poisoned, but didn't realize it.
The acting seemed off. Like the response times are weird, and the jokes are so flat.
Yeah, it is a really, really weird.
The teacher was like just so angry.
Oh, we got to get to that.
But wait, before we jump into it, do you remember, either of you, do you remember the HBO PSAs in like the early 90s?
Oh.
Like there was a famous one with Ben Affleck as the Roid, had like Roid Rage.
What, you think I need steroids to kick your fucking ass?
Now, I know you need steroids to kick my ass.
Oh, yes. I've seen that, but years later, and it was very funny.
Ed, you didn't have HBO, so you wouldn't know.
If I want to see someone with roid rage, I'll look in the mirror. All right, so we open with Henry, who is played by
George Gaines.
George Gaines.
Oh, yeah.
Love George Gaines.
Who let this old ass man foster a kid? The
That
coolest kid in existence.
That
on
is
top
the
of it.
weird underlying
So
question of
weird.
it.
Well, he
George
searched for her parents for a long time. Like that was part of this storyline in the first season.
Okay.
He was
And they found out that the parents didn't want her, that they deliberately left her at the shopping mall.
Wow, that's how you become the coolest kid.
Yeah.
he was actually born in Finland, and he was in World War II for some people.
All
And
right.
he fought some big battle, and then he was in police academy.
I hope this was as much fun for you as it was for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so this scene opens, and there's a weird sound. At first, they think it's Brandon the dog, but it's usually Brandon the dog, they say. But this time it's the fridge.
That's so
And
corny.
The fridge.
Is that like a dog fart joke?
Yeah.
I don't know. Then the fridge explodes, and some black smoke comes into the air.
My refrigerator just blew up.
And Cherie's grandmother comes in. This actress just seemed confused.
She really did.
And Henry says that I have a warranty for this fridge. And in the most highbrow joke of the episode,
Who printed it? Gutenberg?
people don't make ancient world jokes.
No
Yeah.
kid would get that. And that's a kid show.
Yeah. Very weird.
So then the very quick scene, they got to get a new fridge. And then in the next scene, which is an incredible and boring scene,
Ugh.
Punky and her friends are learning about CPR from their teacher, who seems one step away from murdering these children.
Yeah.
He's just so pissed off that they're not taking it seriously.
Oh.
Like right away.
CPR is not a game.
Right away. Just about to lose
His
mind.
energy is very uncomfortable because it's so real. The way that he's just like, enough. Like, you're just like, oh shit, like that triggered me.
This is Recessa Annie. And we are going to practice CPR on her.
No thanks, Mike. She's not my type.
That's enough, Alan.
And the kid who's causing the most trouble is this blonde kid named Alan. And now, do they still make kids in this model? Like, they existed in the 80s. We had a kid in
Aryan-
our school that looked just like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
A silver spoon little Aryan little bitch.
Like a slightly inbred looking blonde, doofy,
Right.
likable
Huge
kid.
melon head.
Yes, exactly.
I like that.
And just like that's his whole thing. is
I like
he-
that you just knew because they were stressing the importance of CPR and he was making jokes of it that he was going to later fuck up and at the end of the episode and
I
not be
didn't
able to do it.
Gravity that it did, though. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
This entire episode is like a blatant setup. And it's just in it, like you said, a PSA. So they literally teach you CPR while you're watching this episode.
Yeah.
Like slowly.
Oh, it's like
Like
it's the
pacing.
CPR is done in like real time.
That fucking light box that they have attached to okay, please explain it.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say that the teacher, Jim Carrey, auditioned for this part. Imagine that.
Whoa.
Wow.
And
No, thank you.
so anyway, they're doing CPR, and it becomes so clear that every time you breathe into this mannequin, it'll set one light off, and every time you pump the chest, it'll set another light off.
Mhm.
They show so many close-ups of this box, like you get it.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the scene, the teacher is like, "Wow, you did it! When you do it right, the light goes on. Wow!" And it's like, "Oh my god, we all knew that."
What about the shot where it opens that scene where they like zoom in on the chalkboard where it says "Learn CPR, save a life"? It was like very dramatic.
Oh, I
There-
somehow missed that. But so Margot is the other.
That's
Like
another 80s trope. People
She
always-
looked like a Cabbage Patch Kid.
she really did.
Oh,
She
yeah.
really did. Her and the kid from Alf could have been like doll transformed into humans via some wish, and they were like, "I'm doing a show too." And when she was raising her hand, it's like she's the kind of kid who, like, the teacher, asks a question and then they like raise their hand like me.
Now, I need 2 volunteers. People who want to learn.
Please pick me, please.
Punky
Yeah.
and
Please, please.
Margot.
You know what these kids are like the kids that made me feel weird as a child of immigrants, like be like, oh, that's what kids are supposed to look like, these perfect little white dolls. Like I'm like, oh
Yeah.
that's what people are telling you that you should be.
Exactly.
Really scary.
Yeah. The dynamic of this podcast is that me and Rusty looked like those kids.
That's not lost on me.
When Margot was begging for the teacher to pick her, I just, on my horrible date last night, what day is today? Sunday night. She mentioned the term gunner for people who do this. And I never I've gone through all my life, never heard this term before. And I remember thinking at that moment, I was like, this term is the only thing I'm going to get out of this experience.
So wait, gunner is what?
Gunner is someone who's like, me, like when the teacher is
Oh,
going to call on someone.
Is it
So
because,
Margot is a gunner.
Whoa.
I mean, it's not slang I'm going to use anytime ever.
Okay.
So now we cut to our next scene, which
now we
is
know how boring that date was.
Henry. Oh, it wasn't boring. It was
wait?
quite-
Are you going to the subplot of the story where Henry's getting a new fridge?
yeah. We go to a scene that
Oh.
could have been like from like 1890, like on stage in like Romania. This is how old world this scene was, and the music playing was like Fiddler on the Roof. I was like,
Yeah.
what year is this scene from?
It made me think that the budget was like $10,000 for this episode.
I mean, it felt like that. And I think they always use that mall set. Didn't they always use that outdoor mall set?
Yes, they did.
And so basically this is a self-contained scene where Henry is talking to a guy, Cheapo Chester. Now, it is true in the 80s, there were a lot more salesmen, a lot more people like selling things that now no one would ever sell because they're just like an Amazon kind of purchase.
I do want his button that he was wearing.
And this was a guy from WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yes.
Long career for this guy. And just a pathetic scene, though. Didn't you feel horrible about life when you're watching this scene?
I did.
There's no reason for that to even happen.
And it took so long. Everything on this, this show is like the most obvious thing, and then you're like, oh my God, it's going to unfold with every single obvious step. Like, I get that it's for a kid, but come on.
What was the hillbilly guy that was the scammer?
Mm-hmm.
Was he the dad in Teen Wolf?
Yeah.
No.
He was, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You should have known that, Ed.
He absolutely was.
Wow. I feel like I would recognize that guy.
Well, he was wearing a hat, Ed.
Yeah, he was wearing a hat. You were mesmerized by that fistful of cash.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
No, 'cause I recognized that actor, and I was like, "Oh, he's the plant." And explain what happens. It's this completely.
It's a great, yeah. So Henry is looking at all the fridges, and it's kind of like the experience of like buying like a used car, basically, but it's fridges.
Well, what can I say to get you to take this little baby home today?
It's free.
Love your sense of humor, Hank. Now, come on, seriously.
And he comes across this one fridge, and he starts talking to the salesman about it, and he thinks he's getting ripped off, but then a guy who's a plant appears, and he's like, oh, wow, I got to buy this fridge. This is a great deal. Wow. And Henry's like, oh, no, you don't. I was here first. And he buys the fridge. And then Henry goes off camera for like, I don't even understand what reason he gave for going into
financing. Well, they were financing it.
And then they reenact the whole scene again with a stranger who walks up. And not to spoil anything later in the episode, but he then mentions to Cherie's grandmother that he bought a fridge at Cheapo Chester's. And then she's like, that place where they run a scam, where a guy come. I'm like, oh my God, now she's just explaining what happened.
I think the basis for that scene, though, is that Henry's notoriously cheap. So they needed an explanation for him to get rid of that fridge. That was like an ongoing theme of the series, that he did not spend any money, that he always fixed things.
Episode where he became addicted to sleeping pills.
That's the one.
I'm not joking.
No, okay. So we'll have to think about that one.
All right. So now we get into the meat of this episode. And
finally,
it just cuts to them playing a game of hide and seek, of the kids playing a game of hide and seek. And Cherie hides in the fridge. And
they're outside.
They're outside.
The fridge is in the middle of the courtyard.
The fridge is in the middle of the courtyard. Henry's going to take the door off, but he has not gotten to it yet.
Oh, because he knows about all those dead kids from the
That was his plan all along.
And then Cherie goes in there, and she is in there for an agonizingly long amount of screen time.
Yeah, that stressed me out as a kid so much.
It stressed me out as an adult, even though this is a horrible episode. I can't believe, like, every time they're having a conversation, you're just like, she's in the fridge.
Miscommunication was that Henry saw her go inside at one point. So he was like, no, it starts to snow.
Hey, it's snowing! Ew! I'm going in before my hair frizzes.
Maybe you better all go in. I'll take the door off after it stops snowing.
And they're like, well, we got to find her. And he's like, I saw her go inside. Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
So they all go inside. And they look, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how long
Henry made me...
That moment was like miscounting the kids in Home Alone. It was like, it's just like a really small scale Home Alone. She's in the fridge.
Henry made me livid in this episode. This is a series of blunders.
She probably just found a good hiding place.
He has an amazing moment coming up.
But you know, the thing is that Punky and Alan were hiding in the car. No, wait. Punky and Margot were hiding in the cardboard box for the refrigerator. And they were looking out a peephole. They would have clearly saw Cherie go into the refrigerator. They were looking in that direction.
I mean, it's like they're trying not to find her. Everyone's ignoring the fridge, checking everywhere else.
Punky! Help me!
Care for some ice, Betty?
Henry, I'm drinking hot chocolate.
They needed some excitement.
And once they start looking for her, the music in this episode is really just perplexing. But the music while they're looking for her destroyed me. Although the music when they find her is like so dramatic. It's kind of incredible.
Oh my God.
So when they do find her, this is, I think I laughed so hard out loud.
Well, Alan and Henry find her.
Alan and Henry find her. And then Henry, who is an old man, yells at this child.
Give her CPR now. Give her CPR now.
Give these people air.
Alan is like, I don't know it. I got kicked out. And Henry's like, what? And the music ramps up so dramatically.
Pay attention, I got sent to the principal's office.
Dear God, I don't know the procedure either.
What do we do? We can't just let her
Alan,
go.
keep calm. I need your help.
And so then Punky and Margot run out.
Cherie got trapped in the refrigerator and she's not breathing.
And we've seen them succeed at this. They run through the routine.
Okay, Margot, look, listen, feel. Her chest isn't moving. Listen. I can't hear anything. Feel. I can't feel her breath.
Man, they take their time though.
I honestly got up and walked away because I was like, they're going through the exact same thing. I'm going to go feed my dog.
Yeah, I couldn't take the stress either. I had to look away as well. And the whole time you're just like, wow, Cherie's got brain damage. She's fucking. She's unconscious too long. Too long.
They have her in the cold snow too, so she's
Yeah.
not breathing and laying in the cold snow.
Still not breathing. We have to do that hard thing.
You girls know what you're doing?
I sure hope so, Henry. Ready, go.
It looks like, I don't know if she had some powder on her. She looked like Dracula's bride. I was like, she's really dead. She's really dead. She's not coming back.
It scared me as a kid. I really believed that the actor went through that.
But then one of my two more moments I loved in this episode. So after they bring Cherie back to life.
You passed out, but we revived you. We did CPR. Oh.
Alan is like, is reminiscent of Easy Rider. He's like, I blew it. I blew it.
I blew it.
And has such a
That was his big moment.
I blew it.
yeah, he has such a big moment where
It was amazing.
he's really beating himself up about it.
God, it would have been all my fault.
And then Henry says,
I didn't know CPR either, but I see its value. Or you say you and I go learn it together, huh?
let's go learn CPR together. And like
And they hug.
walk off. I was like, what does that look like? Where are they going to go learn? Like, me and this child would like to learn CPR.
That kid shedding those tears, he thought he was getting an Emmy for that performance.
Oh yeah.
You know what was more unsettling in this episode than Cherie almost dying? In the beginning, in the first scene when they're in the kitchen together getting ready for school, and Punky leaves the room to go get ready, and Cherie follows, but she walks on top of the chair. Do either of you remember that?
No, I
No.
didn't even notice that.
She's like in the kitchen, but instead she like walks and stands on the chair and then steps down and walks out of the room. It's like, who does that?
Well, I have to rewatch this episode.
Yeah, you gotta.
Do you remember this thing that's also a typical 80s thing where someone steps on the chair and then like puts their foot on the top of the chair and then the chair falls down? And
Oh,
then
yeah.
They're like, ha, I'm so cool.
I
That
was
would've made
pretty sure
sense.
that and pulling what do you call
Tablecloth?
a tablecloth and like having all the things stay in place. I was like, that's gonna be my life when I'm an adult.
Oh, God. Also, The Loft from Big, the movie.
Oh, everybody wanted that.
Ugh. God.
Look around. I don't know what else to say about this.
It was really boring.
This was
Jesus.
painful.
This is the worst.
Would you rank this the
Yeah.
worst? I still
Yeah.
would rank this above Out of This World.
No, there's something about the like dumbness of those characters that kind of made me laugh.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
T.
Yeah, that's true. And the song is so great. Though.
Yeah, that song, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Would you like to swing on a star?
I mean, Punky epitomized cool, but the acting by all the cast in this episode was pretty bad.
I think the only thing to really watch in it is the unusually angry teacher.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that brought me joy. I was like, why is he so mad?
Stop it, okay? Just stop.
So mad.
That's it. That's it.
Well, Punky Brewster does not hold up.
I know. I feel like it didn't even then.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was like a, for kids show. It even aired on Sundays at 7 p.m. in a time slot that before everything was deregulated, had to have some educational content. So that's why Punky was always having those PSA moments.
Last thing though.
What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say last thing, theme song. Did you enjoy it?
We were watching the space shuttle take off, and
Yes?
it exploded.
Well, the other big episode was the Challenger episode where they dealt with that.
Oh yeah. And they did that. I think they turned that episode around really quick.
What is that episode?
Where she watches the Challenger explode.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Do either of you remember watching that in classrooms?
I think so. I have a windbreaker that is Team Challenger.
Do you still have that? It's probably worth money.
Yeah, I bought it recently.
Oh, okay.
Not a lot of money. It was raining. One of the rare times it rains in LA, and I was on the street and I was by a vintage shop and I was like, oh, maybe they have a windbreaker in here, and I freaking see that from across the room, and I was like, no way. And they didn't even know what it was a reference to, so I got it for like $15.
Oh wow!
One last thing to say is that Brandon Tartikoff died kind of young in the year 1997. Rusty, do you think it's a coincidence that he's from Freeport and in the year 1997 is when I stole the Leia and Bush figure from Toys R Us? Maybe that was his life force. Both of our innocences died that day.
Why did he die? Do you know how he died?
He had like some kind of cancer and he'd had like 3 bouts with it. And third time was the charm, he said.
He turned a tragedy into comedy. He turned a tragedy into comedy.
Finally, I know how to do CPR though.
There you have it. Oh yeah. And I don't even think, I think I read recently that like CPR is fake or.
I don't know. Who can say?
Punky Brewster, your mind is just a fantasy. Punky Brewster, I always want you here with me. Punky Brewster, you know what's gonna understand. Punky Brewster, together with the best of friends. Punky Brewster,
Give her CPR now.